Hello, everyone. Welcome to yet another episode of your favorite podcast, Film Seizure. We are here again, the three amigos, if you will. I am Jason Oliver, and we have Jeff Arbuckle.
Hi, I am Jeff Arbuckle. This is going to be a very likable episode.
Maybe our most likable episode ever, Jeff.
Maybe.
And Chuck Moore.
Coca-Cola lipstick. What's up, everybody?
Beautiful. So if you haven't figured out from those obscure clues, today's episode is the it's the 2014 episode. Jesus, I'm having trouble. It's the 2014 movie Frank. Feel like I had a little bit of a Chris CV like breakdown there.
Hey, also they could have just read what they clicked on, Jason.
Oh shit, yeah, I forget they could do that. They see it. Yeah, there's a little banner.
Or maybe we specifically only cater to people who don't know how to read. And that's why they listen to us.
Or see. Yeah, they don't see at all. Yeah.
No, they just don't see what we do for them.
So they just have to just hope that what they click on is going to be good, and usually it sucks. Like
this is I was going to say this is about as awkward as some of the stuff in this movie.
yeah, that's what I was going for. Right. Yeah, exactly. All right, so the movie Frank, I teased this last week. This movie's got some really kind of wild backstory, history. It's sort of, kind of, but not really based on a character created by a real person. So I have to kind of explain that, I think.
Because all characters are created by a real person.
No, created by a character created by a real person. Like it's based on a character.
Yes.
That was created by someone else.
Gotcha. All right.
This is what I meant. Right?
Yeah.
So the people who made this movie did not create the character of Frank. The character of Frank was created by someone called Chris Seizure, named Chris Seizure, back in the early 80s. But the character Frank in the movie isn't based on the character that Chris Seizure created. Just a little bit. Like he's just sort of kind of created based on the Frank.
He's inspired by.
Yeah, he's inspired by. There you go. But let's go back to Chris Seizure, and I'll do the quick rundown. There's a really good documentary called Being Frank about Chris Seizure and Frank Sidebottom that I highly recommend. But for those who haven't seen it and want some context for this movie, whether you've seen the movie Frank or not, here you go. Chris Seizure is from England. Him and his brother were kind of aspiring musicians when they were in their 20s, and like many musical artists, Chris Seizure was obsessed with the Beatles. Him and his brother decided they were going to go down to Apple Records and stage a sit-in, basically. They weren't going to leave until they got a record contract. And they actually got placated. Somebody said, fine, we'll record some tracks. They gave them some nice words and patted them on their heads and sent them on their way. I said, you're not for us. But that was kind of enough for them to kind of keep going. And but it eventually never really went anywhere. And Chris's brother decided to move on. But Chris just kept making music. He's one of those people who just he's constantly writing songs, right? It's funny because Jeff and I watched Tick Tick Boom this year, and it's sort of like that. It's sort of like that guy's brain, right? Where
Jonathan Larson,
where you can just create a song out of anything, and you really can't help from creating songs. Well, that's Chris Seizure. So he created a band called the Freshies in the late 70s. And late 70s music, like especially pop music or popular music in England in the late 70s, was very dark, right? Especially that kind of post-punk in the late 70s was very dark, very gloomy stuff. And Chris Seizure was like, well, fuck all that. I want to do something super poppy and happy and positive. And he called his band the Freshies, right? So, he's always kind of going against the grain. And that's sort of why he never really hit, because he was always just a little bit ahead of his time. The Freshies were not a popular band. They were looked at as very, very uncool in the scene. But, you know, if you go back and listen to their music, it's really good. It's really fun. It's really, it kind of reminds me of sort of like proto Flaming Lips in a lot of ways, right? Very psychedelic, very just weird, right? Just wonky kind of stuff that's really fun to listen to. But they just really didn't ever break through. They had one big hit, not a big hit, wasn't a big hit at all. But but it was like 52 on the charts in England or something like that, right?
In England, that's pretty low.
yeah. It didn't do so hot. But it did, you know, get on some radars, right? And I forget the name of it. It's something about like, I'm in love with the girl on the counter of the Virgin Mega Store checkout desk. I think is the name of the song. It actually had a little bit of notoriety because they got cease and desisted from using the word virgin, and not by Virgin Records, but by like the antitrust government regulation, right? So they had to change it to certain checkout desk, certain megastore checkout desk. But that was the song that almost kind of broke through, but it didn't. Around this time, Chris Seavey decided, well, I gotta create more promotion around the band. So what he did was he created a character that would be the Freshies' biggest fan, and that was the birth of Frank. Frank is like a middle-aged aspiring pop singer who lives in his mother's basement, who is a huge fan of the Freshies, and he would do all these little like few-minute videos of Frank in his adventures, going to Freshies gigs, stuff like that, right? Really kind of funny stuff. Well, what ended up happening was Frank, the persona of Frank, kind of started to overshadow the music of Chris Seavey. And Frank became a character that people responded to. And he would do kind of like opening sets as Frank for Freshies shows. And nobody actually knew 100% that Chris Seavey was Frank, but everybody kind of knew. It was like the worst kept secret, right? But he would do these warm-up sets, and they were kind of like half comedic, half like cover sets of other popular songs. Like he would cover popular songs in England at the time, but put a completely different tone on them and make them really, really terrible, but funny. And he had a little puppet that he just cut out of cardboard named Little Frank, who he would interact with. And it got to the point where Little Frank was more popular than Frank, who was more popular than Chris Seavey and the Freshies. Just can't make this shit up, right? But Frank ended up appearing on all sorts of kid shows in the 80s and into the 90s, I believe, or maybe I think well into the 90s. He was still appearing on kid shows. And eventually Chris just kind of gave him up. He was like, you know what? There are a lot of people close to Chris that thought that maybe he started to resent Frank because Frank was more popular, frankly, than he was, right? And it just got to the point too where a lot of people didn't know where Chris ended and Frank began. But a lot of other people said, well, that's rubbish. It ended when he put, the difference was when he put the mask on. When he put the head on, he was Frank. When he didn't have the head on, he was Chris. But anyway.
But yeah, that's, fair. Come on. It's like, come on.
But he kind of retired Frank for a while, and then decided to bring him back in the early 2000s for a 5-year tour. He had this whole thing mapped out. And at the end of it, he was going to unveil himself on stage as Chris Seavey. And that was going to be the end of Frank, right? But he ended up dying of heart failure or something like that before he could finish he called it the Magical Timperley tour. Timperley is a village in England where Frank is from. But he passed away. He was really sad. He didn't have any money. He was completely broke when he passed away. there was a Kickstarter that was created to pay for his funeral that raised something like £25,000 or something from fans. And there's a statue of him in Timperley as well now, which is pretty cool. There's like a life-size bronze Frank statue with the actual Frank head then on top of it. So it's really badass. It's like the colored sort of paper mache looking head on a bronze body.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. It's
phenomenal.
It's pretty funny. Yeah. I like this just hanging out by the street too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Because he would do tours. He would do tours of Timperley. So you could just show up on certain dates and times and pay for a tour of Timperley, England with Frank Sidebottom. People would honk their horns and wave at him from the street. It's just so good. But anyway, yeah, that's kind of like the quick backstory. Now where the movie kind of comes into play is there's the writer of the movie, John Ronson. He was in Frank Sidebottom's band. So after the Freshies sort of disbanded and Frank Sidebottom's band started, some of the members of the Freshies were in that, but also they added John Ronson. He played keyboards, I believe. So he's very much the Domhnall Gleeson character in Frank is John Ronson. He wrote an article about his time in the band and his time spent with Frank. John Ronson is kind of a gonzo journalist. He wrote the Minute Stare at Goats book that was then turned into a movie about MK Ultra and all that wacky stuff, right? Mm-hmm. He's done a lot of little documentary films and things as well. But he wrote the movie Frank, kind of based on his experiences with Frank, but also he based the character Frank in his movie not on just Frank Sidebottom, but on Daniel Johnston, the American indie folk singer, whatever you want to call Daniel Johnston, songwriter from the early 90s through to almost present day. And then Captain Beefheart. So he created this amalgam of those three personas and put it into the Frank character of the movie. I promised a Kubrick connection with this as well to Chuck. It's very, very loose. It's John Ronson is the actual connection. It's not a Frank connection. But this is interesting to me. John Ronson, he made a small documentary about the Holocaust that no one saw. And he got a letter once from Stanley Kubrick asking for a copy of it. And he was like, what the hell? How does Stanley Kubrick even know about this, right? Because at the time, I think Stanley Kubrick was still researching his Holocaust movie that he never made. And John Ronson, I guess Kubrick passed away before John could ever get it to him or something. But when he reached out about it, the estate was like, oh, yeah. Or maybe he did get it to him. I can't remember exactly the story there, but it created a kind of a relationship between John Ronson and the Kubrick estate. And it gave John the opportunity to go in and look at all of the archives that Stanley Kubrick had. So if you know about his research archives, they're just warehouses of boxes of stuff. And that then inspired John Ronson to make the short documentary film, Stanley Kubrick's Boxes. So there you go.
Huh.
Yeah.
Connection established.
Yes, indeed. So that, I think, brings us up to date with the movie. Is there anything about the backstory of Frank Sidebottom or Chris Seavey that you guys know that you want to add to that, or are we good to kind of jump into the film?
I'm good.
I know nothing of any of that, so
okay.
I'm just here for this weirdo movie.
I think that was a good summary of it for sure.
Cool.
Now, I will admit, I'm going to admit something here. I was very scared that I was going to not like this movie because, Jason, you are obsessed with this, it seemed, especially because you started talking about it a week ago.
Yeah.
And I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
Hold your horses here, pal. It's like, I don't know nothing about nothing. And you're like, well, you can watch this, or you can watch that, or you can read about it here. And I'm like, I ain't doing none of that. But I will say that when I watched this movie, I loved it. Everything about it.
He said love, Chuck.
He went from really, 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 really liked this movie to I love this movie.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about Frank Sidebottom when I saw this movie the first time. I saw it when it first kind of hit the VOD outlets, right? When it came out back in 2014. And I know Chuck was the same. I want to say maybe I watched it and I was like, Chuck, you have to see this movie. And then Chuck watched it and then we both were like obsessed with it for a year.
Yeah, pretty much.
Is that about right?
Yep. And I definitely watched it on your recommendation.
And I think it was put onto my radar by our friend Shannon, which should surprise no one who knows Shannon.
Right.
None of this surprises me in anything, and it probably doesn't surprise you that I was like, what is this? What the fuck is this big giant head guy thing that you keep posting about? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And it became memes and stuff. All right. Before we get really into this, Dom Nall Gleason, is the H silent?
I just call him Dom.
I would, yeah. No, Dom.
Just call him Dom.
Just call him Dom.
Yeah. Okay.
Dominic Toretto Gleason.
he's Jacob Cronus.
Well, they are in this movie.
That's
I made
true,
a note of it.
They are. Oh God.
It's like, oh shit, they're passing out Coronas.
I will say that the backstory for this movie confused me when I learned about it, because I did think it was more autobiographical, or biographical, I should say, than it really is. And I think that's an important distinction, is like the character, the look of the character, and some of the aspects of the musicianship is very much Chris Seavey and Frank Sidebottom, but the movie is in no way, shape, or form about Chris Seavey, the person, right?
No, there are some scenes by John Ronson that are his experiences, but elevated beyond what actually happened.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get into it. I mean, the John Ronson, John Burroughs character played by Dom Gleason is kind of our window into the movie, right? That's our protagonist. There's an interesting, I think, story flip that happens with our protagonist later in the movie. But that's kind of who we follow. He's the sort of everyman. He's someone who I very much relate to in this movie. Like this person who wants so badly to be creative, but is just bad at creating.
I don't know. The Lady in the Red Coat song was pretty great.
It's a thumbs up for sure. Just need a little bit more there.
I think a lot of maybe people who aspire to be creative are a lot like John.
Yeah.
Like I even wrote a song once on guitar and then I was like, oh shit, this is I Got Id by Pearl Jam. Like I wrote a song that already existed and I was very happy with myself until I realized what it was.
Yes, this is very much Dom. There is a scene where he's kind of put on the spot to play his music, play his songs for Frank and the rest of Frank's band, and he's just completely out of his depth. And at one point he starts playing one of Frank's songs.
Right. But this is important because this first scene is kind of like a mirror, right? The end very much reflects the beginning, at least a part of it. He's trying to write songs about everything he sees, right? He's watching waves roll in and he starts singing. He sees kids building sand castles. And every one of his songs is very literal to what is happening. He can't make the jump into giving it a more meaningful, I don't know how to explain this because I'm not creative.
He can't make it metaphor. He can't make it poetic. And he honestly can't make it all that catchy.
Right.
It's just not that pleasing to listen to.
I think you got it. He can't make it.
Yeah. He's just like sing-songing words, which is what I do all the time. But none of that is going to ever get on an album.
Right. Which is back to the connection with Tick, Tick, Boom. Which is similar, except for that guy was real good.
Yeah, basically a genius. Yeah, exactly. um, so he's he's just the whole kind of opening scenes of the movie is understanding John's frustration with songwriting, and also his sort of one-way relationship with social media, right?
He has 14 followers on Twitter.
Yeah.
Hashtag nom nom nom.
Yeah. So he's out then, I forget what exactly he's doing, but he sees this kind of dust up on the shores of the beach in a little village town where he lives. And there's a van, an old beat up van, very much like you would expect a tour van to look like for a band with no money or fans. And it has the name of the band written in that washable paint basically on the side of it, right?
It's dripping. Yeah. Yeah.
And there are some cops there.
But wait, what is the name of the band?
You can't pronounce it. I don't know how to pronounce it. No one in the band knows how to pronounce
somebody tries to later. It's great.
It's like
Saran. I just said that it was the Fahuko gods. That's good enough for me. Yeah.
But he's talking to a guy on the beach, and it's Scoot McNairy is the actor, and he's like, "What's going on?" He's like, "Oh, he's having a mental breakdown. He had some bad acid or something like that, I think is what he said. I don't remember exactly, but the police are kind of hauling him out of the ocean, and they they take him in an ambulance, but John the whole time is enamored by the fact that, oh my gosh, you're the band who's in town to play a gig that I saw a poster for.
Right.
And they're like, oh yeah, but some show it's going to be, we can't play, we don't have a keyboardist. And he just kind of says offhandedly, well, I'm a keyboardist. And he looks at him like, really? And he goes to talk to someone in the van. He comes back in, he's like, you're in. Show up at the side entrance of the theater at 8 p.m. And he's like, oh, okay, I guess I'm in a band. And then he's like, do you think he's gonna be okay? The keyboardist? And they're like, oh, I don't know, maybe, probably, maybe. And he goes and he asks because he wants to make sure the keyboardist isn't going to show up. It's like, well, we got to admit him into the hospital and pump his stomach. He swallowed a lot of seawater, and he kind of gives this little grin, like, I'm in. Which it kind of is your first sign that John is a little bit of an opportunist, right? Okay, so. He's got a gig with a band that he doesn't know the music for, right? He's just supposed to show up. I think he assumes he's going to rehearse, right, beforehand. You would think probably he would learn the music, but no, that's not what really Frank's band is about.
No, he just needs to be able to play C, G, and F.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, that's right.
You know these three chords. That's good enough.
Well, because I'm not so sure that Frank's band knows Frank's band songs.
Right. They are improvisational, to say the least.
They are. I would hate it. I would hate every minute of this concert.
Oh, I would love listening to this music live, but this should have been some kind of warning to John early on that his input would never be needed. He just needed to be able to hang with them.
Play C, G, and F.
Yeah, like it should have been a warning to him that they didn't need him for anything musically, really.
Yeah, and that's the way he's treated throughout the movie, but that he's constantly trying to stand out in this band of highly creative people, right? But anyway, he's basically, he just walks on the stage, and they're in the middle performing. And he's just kind of has to saddle up to the keyboard, and then Frank comes out and starts singing his. Oh, I love it. He's like, Chris Seavey would probably be in awe of this, because I don't think this was ever conceived. But the Frank head that is being worn is hooked up to the an amplifier, so he can just plug in his head It amplifies his voice from within through the speaker system, which is genius.
It's very awesome.
Yeah. So he's singing, and then they're just kind of building this song on stage, which is actually pretty fun. I like the sound of the song. And John is kind of throwing in his CG and E flare, here and there, and he's kind of getting into it. And it is actually starting to come together, and he's feeling like he's part of something to, like, I don't know, a dozen people who are just kind of milling around in this bar, right? And then the self-destruction happens on stage, like you imagine always happens with these people. They Maggie Gyllenhaal, who is their thereminist and like synth electronic, like all the wonky wild
she's their
sounds.
psycho.
Yeah. She gets electrocuted by her equipment, and then she turns around and she starts fighting with the guitarist, and then the whole thing just, like, she just storms off stage. The rest of the band storms off stage, and then it's just Frank and John on stage. And I think Frank just looks around, and it's just great because he's in his, like, huge head. Yeah, and then he just leaves.
Well, it's funny because that electrocution piece happens, and John stops playing, and that's what angers Maggie. I forget her actual character name. Clara, thank you. And she blames the whole thing on him for stopping playing. It's like, you should have kept playing. So you get the sense that this is par for the course for these people. They're always going through this kind of stuff, and they just persevere.
Well, because the guitarist also stops playing because I think he wants to go see if she's okay.
Yeah.
And she yells at him, too. It's like, well, you going to fucking stop playing?
That's what she shoves him. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Funny stuff.
Oh, man. So I don't actually remember what happens directly after this.
Well, John
he
just
goes back to work.
Yeah.
And he gets somebody walks by and says he's got a phone call.
Yeah.
And so he picks up the phone, and it's Scoot McNairy,
Don, the manager, Scoot McNairy. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's like, so Frank liked you.
Yeah, he found you cherishable. I thought he said perishable. But
what does
like,
cherishable?
But perishable, like, we're all perishable. What's so great about that?
And so it's like, so we're doing this really big thing. We're going to go to this island off of Ireland. Come with us. Meet us at this place at this time. So always meet us at this place at this time with this band. And I would hate it. So they get there, and like the band or the van rolls up, and John's like, oh, I thought you said to go here, so I thought I'd come out here. And it's like he's just being a goofball at this point. And they're like, whatever, get in the van. And he gets in, and there's Frank with his fucking head back there, to which I think surprises John because he thinks that it's just an act thing. No, it's every day. It's every minute of everyday life. And Claire is back there just staring daggers into him the whole time. And so they go off to this island where Don basically makes it seem like they're never going to leave.
Oh yeah, he's showing everyone where their living quarters are, where they're sleeping, and he's like, John says, "Wait, how long are we gonna be here?" He's like, "Well, until the album's finished." It's like, "Well, I have to be back at work on Monday."
Yeah,
he has no idea what he's in for at all.
Right. Yeah. So.
There is a funny moment before they get to the island that I just want to mention real quick. Frank's head gets lit on fire in the background. He's trying to light a cigarette, and he's like, "I'm on fire. I'm on fire." It's just really funny.
That's when John is asking Don, it's like, so, is he like this all the time? And Don's like, yeah, and it's kind of revealed that everybody has issues in this band, because Don's issue is he used to fuck mannequins.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And he wants to be Frank. He wants to be Frank Sidebottom.
Yep.
Right.
So, yeah, who appeared to be the normal person, he says, like even Don says, like Frank is the sanest person I've ever met.
Yep.
Right. And you're like, okay, so the person we think might have some grounding in reality is not who we thought he was. So
No,
everyone
he's not. He's not well, and
Yeah.
he met Frank in a mental institution as well.
Yes.
So yes. So yeah, everybody. Yeah, this is around the time where John should be feeling a little uncomfortable. Probably, I would be feeling a lot uncomfortable. It's like, oh boy, I may have stepped in shit here, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be scared to go to an island with these people I barely know. Who
Yeah.
I had
One
a
of them
find out they're
with.
all a little bit crazy.
And
Yeah.
one of them just walks around in a weird satin nightgown with her bra hanging out and a knife.
Yeah.
I like that, but I don't want to be around that.
Yeah.
I like watching that, but from the other side of the TV.
Yes.
I love after Don gives the tour, and Frank seems satisfied. He's standing by the window, and he says, "We will have many productive seasons here."
Yep.
Which is true, as we will find out later. But yeah, so they start recording stuff, and they're just recording sounds like Frank doing weird lunges.
They're field work.
Yeah,
Field work.
whipping swooshes, water pouring. And I wrote again, I would hate all of this. I would absolutely hate all of this, but it is a very funny situation.
Then when they finally start making music, they're not recording anything. They're just rehearsing because Frank insists that it all be perfect before they record anything.
Right. Well, at one point, Don takes off running. Yeah. And Maggie Gyllenhaal just comes out with like a fucking boomerang or something and just fucking beans him from like 40 yards away.
Yeah. So
and then just walks back into the house like it was nothing, like it's an everyday occurrence.
Yeah, I think
stay away from my
Don
fucking
probably
therapy.
tries to harm himself a lot, is what, and Frank always has to stop him from doing so.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, but it really shows that like there is everything in this band is broken. But yeah, so
but the one thing they do share that's not broken is their creative process. And that's really what this whole movie is about, is the wrench that gets thrown into that process.
Yeah,
they
have
all the people.
They have a harmony that works.
Yeah.
For them, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then it turns out that John is kind of the problem with them,
right?
Because he's just not the one that fits. Yeah.
Yes. And so because like the other thing, like he is so wrapped up in he's more of a hype guy than anything, because he wants to record what they're doing, put it on YouTube. He's building a fan base for them, and that's the only thing he can really contribute, but it's not what they want. He doesn't do anything that they actually want. And he also wants to try to become kind of more creative too, which is, that's a difficult thing to do. And it's especially difficult when you're listening to a self-help book and it tells you to make it so that you move your face instead of moving the razor and cut your face all to shit.
I mean,
he's having a bit of an existential crisis. John is. He's trying to figure out who he is and how he fits in, right?
Yeah. And, it's okay just to say you don't. This is not your group.
But then he kind of gets caught up in the charisma that is Frank, right?
Well, because Frank is the one guy who is truly kind to him, who doesn't just see him as a utility or doesn't just want to wish him dead or isn't a French fuckhead.
He even goes out of his way to make him feel comfortable with the head, right?
Yes.
He's like, would it be more helpful if I described my facial expressions to you, right?
Right.
And John was like, yeah, that would help. And Frank is more than happy to comply
To
But
which Clara hates
Clara
it.
is like not having it. She's like, "Would you please stop doing that? It's annoying."
I love the part where Frank is like, well, faces are weird too. Like they look all right, and then it's just, ugh. And he's like, and lips look like the very edges of a serious wound. So Frank is like, yeah, my face is just as normal, or maybe more normal than yours. It's funny.
So,
but this is also then when Frank starts to encourage John to share his creation, to share his music. It's like, share your music with us, John, in like the most enthusiastic way possible. He asks for that.
yeah, because he goes to Claire and it's like, guess what? John writes songs too.
It's like a nightmare scenario, right? Where you just have like this very modest little thing you want to share, and then somebody starts making a big deal out of it.
And as it turns out, he really has nothing to share. He gets 4 bars into anything he's created, which you get the feeling that that's as far as
he's ever gone. Yeah. So he, so that falls flat on its face, and but Frank doesn't. He just is like, yeah, okay, well, it'll come, or what, that's the kind of the attitude he gives John. And so one problem starts to present itself, and that is they're out of money, and they have been in this cabin for like 30 days past the last time they paid anything. So they got to pay money, and also the people who actually own the place come home.
Yeah. Well, it's I don't even think it's the people who own the place. It's the people who have been rented the place.
Yeah, they're vacationers.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. They're the next people who have I thought they said that they had owned it, but they may have just said rented it. But yeah, so
I was going to say there are a few things going on here. Frank brings them to a place where he wants them to just challenge each other and press each other, and things get kind of dangerous, and they have their safe word chinchilla.
They just beat on each other.
Yep. And John is feeling down about the fact that he can't write a song, but he thinks he writes something decent, and he plays it for Don, and then Don plays his song about fucking a mannequin in the winter, and it's freaking hilarious.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, around this time is when the people come to visit. And Frank is like, without saying anything, he's like, I'll handle this. And he takes the woman outside. I wish I knew what he said to her, but he basically just like enlightens her in some way, right? Because this is what Frank does.
It's like he frees her of like, because and they just start dancing and like twirling around, and it's very sweet.
She says, "Thank you for this new truth in my soul."
Yep, and they just leave happily. But that means they have to pay, and who has to do the paying?
Well, John has a nest egg.
Yep.
And he's going to let the band basically live off his dime. He's like, well, when my grandfather died, I inherited some money. It's just kind of hanging out in an account. I can use it or whatever. And they're like, oh, great. Okay, let's get back to work. But then it's 11 months later.
Yeah, and they're finally going to record. Recording is about to begin in earnest. They don't want to use any of my compositions, and I gave them my fucking nest egg.
Right.
Right before they don't use any of his compositions, he actually shares
a song he really likes.
Yeah, the song he really likes, and it's not much, but it's got something, and Frank likes it. And then he sits excited.
Down, and he sits down at the piano and starts playing. And then he's like, all right, Clara, come over here. And so basically they squeeze John out and they make it a fucking weird song.
Oh, yeah. You can't even recognize what it began as, which is hilarious. But that's also so indicative of John's problem, right?
Yeah.
Is he can't elevate anything. You could argue whether they did, but they're going to take an idea and run with it. John is just happy to have one, right?
Right. Yeah, it's like these people, whether you like what they produce or not, are artists in the sense that they will think of something and then they will pick at it until they're happy with it. John,
or until they just discard it because they don't like
because it doesn't work.
Right.
And they can discard it relatively quickly.
Yeah.
John is a wannabe artist who can't get past the creative element, or he can't even start with the idea part to get to the creative element. So like he is always second guessing ideas, whereas these other people will take an idea to the end of the road, whatever the end of the road is. It could be at the end of the driveway, or it could be all the way to completion. So yeah, it's he's the exact opposite, and he just doesn't fit in. But they start recording, and my note was that the song that they're recording is like something Jim Morrison would do if he was high on sniffing his own drug farts.
It's the Secure the Galactic Perimeter song, I think. Right?
Yeah.
I love the music in this.
It is perfect for what it is. I don't know if I could listen to this album. I couldn't listen to the soundtrack minus the movie. It's
interesting though, because there are versions. Obviously, there are the working versions of the songs, and then Stephen Rennicks actually produced full versions of these songs and put them on the album. And I don't know, I find them really fun to listen to.
Yeah, in most of the cases, I like the natural version in the movie versus the actual produced soundtrack versions of the songs. But they're both good, in my opinion. I enjoy both of them.
So they finish the album and they start passing out Coronas. Because that's how
we
you
have
sell
to talk
them.
about the fucking Secure the Galactic Perimeter. Well,
we did. You got up for a second. I said it was like something like Jim Morrison would do if he was high on sniffing his own drug farts.
Okay, sorry, my bad.
No, go ahead.
No, I just love that song. Yeah, my bad.
No, it's so. That's where I was saying it's like I don't know if I could listen to the soundtrack or the music separate from the movie.
It is
in the movie. It's
where
perfect.
you see like the culmination of their creative work, right? Like this is what they have produced. This is what they have come up with after all this like fighting and angst and field work and pulling every ounce of creative energy out of each other, right? This is like the culmination, and it does work. There's a harmony to it, and Dom Gleason in his like crazy hair because he hasn't shaved since the shaving mishap earlier.
Right.
You kind of even feel like he's kind of gotten to a place of creative output that fits, right?
Well, absolutely. I mean, there's harmony. They wake up in the morning and they're all, with the exception of Frank, they're all sleeping together on a bed. And Don's not there. Yeah. They're all sleeping together. So they have somehow formed a bond surrounding the recording of the music that does not exist outside of that for John with anyone other than Frank, maybe.
Right. Well, and what was there was something that shit, never mind. I had something, but then I lost it. But yeah, go ahead. Keep going.
So yeah, Dom wakes up in the morning and he goes out, or I call them Dom, but I mean John. Wakes up and goes out for a smoke in the morning, and he's kind of looking around like self-satisfied. And then he notices that John is hanging from a tree.
So real quick, a couple of things I do want to say. At one point, John is really wants to know what Frank looks like.
Yeah.
And he's like, he wants to tell him about the song he wrote. Or I think that was, or it was something he wants to tell Frank something. And he notices that Frank's in the shower, and he notices that his head is sitting over there. And this fucking killed me. This fucking killed me. He goes into the bathroom hoping to sneak a peek at Frank's real face, to which then suddenly Frank throws the curtain open, and he's just wearing another version of the head with a plastic bag over it.
Yep. It is very funny.
There's also a really important scene that happens where you learn that Don was the previous keyboard player before
That
the
comes
keyboard
up
player.
next. Yeah.
Oh, does it come up after he died?
Yeah,
After he
they
dies?
have.
Okay.
Yeah.
But they think at first the thought is that Frank hung himself.
Right.
Yes.
Because he's wearing the Frank mask.
He's wearing the extra Frank mask. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they realize, oh no, it's Don. Because Frank
Frank
walks
comes out.
up. Yeah, he walks in. It's like, what's going on?
And a bag of groceries in his head, and
They did have to. So also the nest egg is like severely depleted to the point where they have to ration food, and Frank only eats like powdered food through a straw because he never takes his head off. But at one point, John is trying to sneak some food and is attacked by Clara, who also wants to sneak food. It's a fucking farce at sometimes in this. It's great.
You
So
need, you need those moments in this movie to, like, the funny moments. Without them, it would probably fall flat on its face. Overall, it'd be too depressing.
Oh
Probably.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. So speaking of dark joke that I laughed at pretty hard was the fact that they give Don a Viking funeral.
Yeah, they put him on a pyre, man. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And they have a mannequin leg next to him, which is
with
funny
flowers
too.
in it. Yeah.
And that's when I think Frank mentions, or Claire, one of them mentions that Don was the previous keyboard player.
He was the first keyboard player.
First keyboard player. So this band has an awful time finding a keyboard player. They'd definitely be better off without one. Right?
Yeah.
Why can't Clara also play keyboards?
Yeah. What, Jason?
Yeah. So Don played keyboards, and then he became their manager and like sound engineer. Right.
Right.
So he didn't work out as a keyboardist, but he found another way to contribute. Right. Then you had the next keyboardist who went crazy on the beach, is never seen from again, and now you have John, and it's like a dawning realization. It's like, but he's still not quite getting it.
Nope.
He's like,
the rest of us have got
all the keyboarders in this band lose their shit, in some way, shape, or form. They don't fit. They are probably never going to fit. They've tried ways to fit that obviously haven't panned out for them or anyone else, but damn it, he's going to keep trying, right?
And I think that
he should probably learn, we recorded the album, let's move on, but something happens that he just cannot let it go.
Yep. And Don actually did, I think this is like the culmination of his life, right? They recorded an album and he recorded it, so he found his way to contribute finally, and I think he was satisfied with that. Yeah. And that's why he goes and hangs himself.
Yeah.
Agreed.
There's nothing else to accomplish.
Right. Yep. 100%.
So by the way, when the when the Viking funeral concludes, fucking Frank goes out there with a fucking can and just starts like just picking up fistfuls of the ashes and sticks it in the can.
Yeah, and that can is an empty version of whatever protein powder thing he drinks.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's shortly after this that John gets an invite to play at South by Southwest.
Yep.
They've seen the videos, to which John thinks this is great because 57,000 people have watched our videos.
It's 2,000. It's 23,571.
That's what. Yeah.
Because Frank says 2371 people are interested in us.
And so like, Frank likes the idea, and he's like, hey, we found the audience, which is what, to a certain extent, Frank is kind of, he's enamored by the idea of somebody finally hearing what they do. He's someplace
he even says that Clara, finally someone understands me, that people might actually like our music, unlike Clara.
Right. Yeah. Because Clara is just a horribly unhappy person.
Yeah, I think he even says Clara would be happy if no one listens to us or something like that. Yeah,
right. And that she has a reason for that, and it's actually a good one, but you don't know it at this point.
Right.
You have no idea why.
Right. So she goes outside, well, because John thinks I've done my part, and he's just relaxing in the hot tub, and he's so proud of himself. He's just smoking a cigarette. It's like, I've done what I've finally contributed. Clara comes out and starts yelling at him, trying to turn off the because he can't hear her over the bubbles. So she's trying to, and he's like, all you've done is just reset the timer. So she starts yelling at him, to which he then calls her a cunt. And then smash cut to them fucking each other.
Yeah, he stands up and she looks at his cock. And apparently that's all it takes to get her hot, because yes, she starts fucking him in the hot tub.
Yeah.
And she does tell John, if he fucks up South by Southwest, she's gonna stab him.
She points with her toe at him right in his face and says, if you fuck everything up in America, I'll stab you.
Yep.
And he's just like, okay.
But he's also like, I'm still kind of with him at this point in a first watch. Kind of sympathize with him. The second watch, you can't really, because you know what he's like. But he's so confused. He's like, I did something good. Why am I getting threatened here?
Well, he also confuses their now relationship, which is like, this is going to be awkward. And it's like, what do you mean? It's like, well, us being together. It's like, oh no, we're not together. Just get that. I wouldn't be together with somebody as disgusting as you.
Yeah, she says, we will never be together. I find you disgusting.
And this is also around the time that he realizes she is in love with Frank.
Yeah. Yes.
Right. Yes. And is afraid that if he becomes famous, that she will lose him. Which I mean, I don't know if that's the greatest reason, but it is a reason.
It is not the reason, though. John is completely wrong about the reason.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So they get into America, and they're driving along in the Sonoma van, and
you tried.
I tried. But Chuck, you laughing makes it all worthwhile.
I won't even give it an attempt.
Well, at least I tried then. Anyway, so they decide to stop and pull over someplace in the middle of the fucking desert. And they're going to spread John's ashes, because John is also John and Frank and Clara are all Americans. And so they, it's like John had told Frank at some point, not John, Don had told Frank at some point that he loved the desert. And so Frank thinks this is the perfect place to dump his ashes. So they go out, and he says something really nice about how this is how he always wanted to be. He always wanted to come back here, but he couldn't get here. And he starts throwing the ashes into the wind.
Some of it hits the French guitar player. It's very much like the
Big Lebowski
joke, right? Yeah. But there's an extra sting to the joke.
Go for it.
It's the veggie nut. He grabbed the wrong container. So who knows what happened to Don's ashes? Maybe they were consumed.
Well, it's funny too, because before you realize it's a veggie nut, Clara comes up and starts eating some of it, and you're like, holy shit.
Yeah. It's like, what is she doing? And she's like, you fucking idiot, it's veggie nut. And to which Frank just looks around, it's like, oh.
Yeah.
It's like, well, then where's Don? And the French guy's like, oh, I packed packed the wrong can.
Yep. But Clara still goes and throws all the veg nut around in the desert.
Right. And they all walk back to the and it's just sometimes it's funny. Frank just standing there is funny because it's like it's someplace in between a dejection and a I still tried to, and he's still like going through the fucking ceremony or whatever.
He's not gotten the cue of what he's supposed to do next. Like he's just in his own mind basically and doesn't move. It happens quite a few times.
This is like funny. This is where the Frank character is very
Daniel
Johnston, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes. This is where that starts to happen because you really get to start to get a sense of Frank's mental illness. You get an understanding of, he wants to be accepted. But he's afraid. He has his own insecurities about failure as well, which are totally normal. But when combined with a very real mental illness, it's dangerous. And this is where Clara is very in tune with Frank and is trying to protect him. Yeah. Because what you find out is that they get to the New Discoveries booth to register, and the two people who invited them, who are pretty low level employees at South by Southwest, they're in charge of like finding talent that is sort of on the fringes and showcasing them as new discoveries, which was not really all that well explained maybe to John, or he wasn't hearing it.
Well, he probably was looking past it.
What you find out is that they have some likes, but they'll be lucky if maybe a handful of people in the room actually know who they are.
Yeah.
And this is where Frank starts to break down, because he, in his mind before this, he's saying things like legions and multitudes of adoring fans. Like he is on this huge manic high of acceptance that he thinks he's on the precipice of. And now he's hearing this and it's all crashing.
Right. And but they're still going to get their opportunity, and that's what not only the organizer or the people who brought them there, but also John is trying to say, even though John is coming to the realization that it's like, well, that's nothing. It's like that. Those numbers are nothing, because they were like, well, you really aren't going to be worthwhile until you have 500,000, and that's, yeah. But
but Frank disappears.
Well, there's a really, really important moment here. Frank is kind of in his own mind, like crashing, right? He's realizing what this situation actually is. And he's kind of spinning around in the middle of a party that they're at. And Clara goes to John and she's like, I really need your help to get him out of here. Yeah. And John's like, he's fine. So it's like John does not recognize or understand Frank at all. Clara understands what Frank is going through and knows that this is bad. And she's like, nope, we got to get him out of here. And he does disappear, but there's also, doesn't the most likable song ever.
Right. Before he has his full breakdown, or is in the middle of it. Yeah. He convinces, this is in my opinion, where John becomes the villain of the movie.
Yeah.
Because John wants Frank to change. His entire artistic presence. He wants him to be more likable. As soon as he says those words, John is the villain.
Yeah, agreed. Because, it's like what he's trying to do now is trying to mold the band into, okay, we've got a following because we're weird, but imagine if we could be likable.
Yeah.
At that point, the likability element becomes more important than the standing out because you're a little weird but still doing something kind of interesting concept.
And Frank starts to go through the transformation where he starts wearing lipstick when he's going to write the song. And like he's doing some kind of transformation in his own mind that he thinks will get him to be more likable.
Yeah. I also love his gigantic headphones on his helmet, on his helmet mask.
Or they're around his neck. It's hilarious.
Oh yeah, because they're like because he could almost wear it around his shoulders. Yeah.
And there's a moment of corruption that you really feel like John has has fully instilled his total lack of creativity in a way that has brought the whole house down. And it's when Frank plays his most likable song ever, which is hilarious. The song that Chuck
Coca-Cola
introduced
lipstick.
himself.
Dance with me. Dance with me.
And it's completely bonkers. The song is, right, and even Claire says that's your most likable song.
Yeah.
And she's like, people are gonna love it.
But then John goes up and he's like, well, we can work with it. He starts to change it, and Frank says, John fixed it. That's so likable.
You should be famous. It's so likable.
Yeah. And this is where it's like if you think about that scene earlier in the movie where they take John's song and change it, right?
Yep.
Now he's doing that to Frank's songs, and Frank is responding to it. And he's like, in no way, shape, or form should he be responding to anything musically creative that John is putting out there, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It's where the mirror starts. This is very mirroring the early part of the film for the rest of the way.
And this is where Frank is cracked. He's having a full-on mental breakdown at this point, because even if he thinks this song is likable and that people will like it, it's not him, right? And he's not really able to reconcile that.
Yeah, and so he does eventually.
And Claire stabs John.
Well, okay, wait a minute. Now, Jesus Christ, you just jumped to the punchline there. They disappear. John's trying to find them. The French guitarist and the drummer decide they're leaving because they hate John so much that he's broken the band. They're leaving. So he eventually finds, or they tell him though where they last saw Frank, and he goes and finds Frank basically like huddled next to a fucking dumpster with Clara, and John's videoing this.
Yeah.
And he's like trying to talk to them, and that's when Clara stands up and comes at him with a knife, to which he starts screaming chinchilla.
Yep.
And she stabs him and she gets arrested. Yeah. And now John and Frank are alone. And
well, not quite yet. John goes back to the room and the French people are consoling Frank on the bed. And they're like, John's going to ruin the band. So we're getting the hell out of here.
Okay.
Yeah. And they leave. And this is John's opportunity, right? He could make a good decision here or a bad decision. He definitely makes the bad one.
Yeah.
And he's like, it's going to be okay, Frank. We're going to play acoustic. People love acoustic sets, right? Of other people's music. I'm like, well, they don't even know your original music. So having an acoustic set makes no sense.
Right.
But Frank goes into the bathroom before they're ready to play and completes his full transformation to look like Frank the woman or whatever he's thinking.
Yeah, he's wearing full makeup. He's wearing a dress. And even John pauses for a second. It's like, oh, this is not right. This is not what he does.
And then Frank says, let's fuck. It's his way of saying, I'm ready to go. Let's go do this thing.
So they go out and they start playing, and Frank just collapses and starts saying, it's terrible.
But they're also playing a John song, right?
But it's terrible.
The music is shit. The music is shit.
And so they basically crash and burn. They end up having to go stay at like one of those live-in hotels that people have to go live at when they get kicked out of their houses. And time is starting to run out as far as like they need to pay. They don't have any money. And
man, Frank's head is all in disarray. Like,
well, he's got it taped up with electrical tape or duct tape.
Yeah.
Because he hit his head. He also somebody else go ahead. I had a thought and it escaped me.
No, that's all right. So they and so like John now decides he just wants to take Frank's helmet or mask off, and they start wrestling. And again, it's not. I mean, it's funny, but in kind of that depressing way, because it's but it's
a tragic way.
I mean, it is, what's happening is tragic, but them wrestling each other is fucking hilarious because it's so. it's so
he's trying to pull his giant head off of him. I mean, it's so farcical,
right? It's just so like it's not at all looks like it is practiced or at all. It's just like these are just two people just wrestling each other like kids, you know.
But Frank runs away.
Yes, and then he just runs away. Yeah,
but he gets hit by a car.
Yeah. Right.
And instead of John, and this John is just becoming more villainous at this point.
Oh God, this is his most despicable moment in my opinion.
Well, he gets karmically paid off for this, though. He gets his comeuppance.
He asked the guy that hit him, "Did you see his face?" That's all he cares about. He doesn't care about Frank's well-being at this very moment.
Nothing. Yeah.
Nothing. And then he starts to walk out into the street, and like Jeff said, he gets his karmic comeuppance. He gets hit by a cartoon. It's really funny and sad at the same time.
It is. It really, really is, because it just happens out of nowhere, and he gets fucking blindsided by a truck. And so he ends up in the hospital in traction, and but he gets released, and he has to go, and he wants to go and try to find Frank. And so he starts using his
using his Twitter account
his Twitter account. He also comes across a shit kicker bar where the rest of the Somnambulists were hanging out and playing. And there is something about
I like how he finds them, because he saw an advertisement for their band.
Which is all just like consonants.
It was just like all M's and C's.
Yeah.
But they're playing totally uninspired music, right?
They are playing old country western songs.
Yeah.
Like
but in the most dreadful way possible.
Right. You know what it reminded me of? And I meant to pull this up before, but like there's something really haunting about it, especially how like Maggie Gyllenhaal's singing the songs, but it makes me think of when Sonic Youth covered that one Carpenter song.
Oh yeah.
Where it's real haunting, and that's not at all how the Carpenters did the song. I mean, it's the similar tempo, but it's off, you know, and it's like it sticks with you a little bit. And yeah, it's like this is so anyway, he gets he gets messages that are jokes about where he can find Frank, but he finally gets one that leads him to a town in Kansas, and because I think he knows that Frank is from Kansas.
Don I think mentioned earlier in the movie that, hey, he once told me he's from this place. So when John sees that, he's like, okay, this is the one. And this is a really cool scene because it's very mirroring the beginning, because John has been, the whole time we've talked about this, he's like trying to define or understand where creativity comes from. And he's walking through the neighborhood, and it looks exactly like his in England. There's a guy spraying his lawn. There's some kids playing with something. Like, it's very much a mirror of his situation to begin the movie, right?
There's also a line that's really important, where John says something about, miserable child.
There you are.
He says, miserable childhood, mental illness. Where do I find that kind of inspiration? Right.
Right.
It's something that John really thinks in his head is where creativity comes from. Yeah.
This is, I'll admit something here, because in my 20s, I used to think my life was too normal for creativity's sake, right? Like, I'm not Ernest Hemingway. I'm not tortured.
Pain.
I'm not. Yeah. And it's a big fallacy, right?
Yep.
But he goes and he starts talking to a guy in the lawn that I think he thinks is Frank or related to Frank. And the guy's like, hey, I'm just here to trim the trees, man.
I'm just a tree surgeon.
Yeah.
Leave me alone. I'm just looking at this tree.
Yeah. But then he sees a guy just standing in the yard. Obviously, it's damage to his head from the car accident. He's
well,
like, okay.
the damage is actually from the mask.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not.
Well, yeah, but he has some shit on his head from the accident too. I think maybe not.
No, he
Yeah,
has
you
bald
might-
spots from the
Yeah,
mask.
his hair is falling out because it's
Yeah,
not.
I guess you're right.
Yeah.
I had assumed it was some
Yeah,
from
because
the accident.
he's worn that mask for like 20 years or something. So it's permanently put a scar or a crease on his forehead, and it
Mhm.
follows through his hairline.
Yeah.
This was a cool surprise too. The first time I watched this, because I had no idea Fassbender was even in it.
Yeah, we haven't even mentioned that. The whole time that Frank is in this movie, it's Michael Fassbender under a mask, who apparently really liked acting under the mask.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's what he said. Yeah.
But yeah, it is Michael Fassbender. That's proof that he can do anything.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah.
But even John is still, even after having walked through his neighborhood, still believes that Frank had to have had a bad childhood.
Right.
Something had to be wrong with his life to make him this way. And then, Jason, I know you probably wrote this line down. What does his mother say exactly about creativity?
Well, yeah, they're pretty emphatic that he had a normal childhood. And this is Daniel Johnston's parents to a T, by the way. He had a normal childhood. We were always good to him.
I think they even said that they supported his artistic, ventures and everything.
But she says the music was always there. When asked, they asked about the mental illness, and she says the music was always there. And it was the mental illness. If anything, it slowed him down. Right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Well,
because it was a hindrance to his creativity.
Well,
Very
at one point,
moment.
Yeah, and he even says like, "Well, how long has he been like this?" And the dad's like, "Well, he has a mental illness. He's always had it."
Yeah,
it's like this is just how people are. It's not. Sometimes things can happen where psychological abuse can create a mental illness. Most of the time, though, there's something already lying there.
Yeah.
And it is. I mean, the parents are so accepting of him. It's almost heartbreaking that it's like they were powerless to do anything more. They did everything they could. And the dad does say, though, it's like the whole thing with the mask was when he was like 10 or 11, he wanted to wear a mask for a costume party. He didn't realize there was no costume party, and he made him a mask, and he liked wearing it, and they never told him not to.
Yeah, they said the worst mistake they made was catering to his illness. Yeah,
exactly. Where back then they should have been able to see this kid needs help.
Yeah.
And they didn't. They just were trying to be good parents, and sometimes trying to be too much of a good parent can also stand in the way of being good parents. It's kind of both ways. When you are, artistic, your artistry can be affected by mental illness. Identifying mental illness can sometimes be blocked by just trying to be a good parent.
Yeah, that is the Devil and Daniel Johnston documentary about Daniel Johnston to a T. His relationship with his parents is so complex in that because they think they just have an unruly child that they don't understand, right? Who is slowly, as he gets older, his illness is getting worse, and they're never able to quite identify it or understand it or come to terms with it, but they try to give him everything and all the support they can to a point, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they can't just allow him to do whatever he wants either. He's their kid, Kids don't get to just do whatever they want.
Right.
So trying to find this balance and understanding while really trying to still love their child, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah, and they even, it doesn't even seem like that they even saw him as unruly.
Right.
They just got to a point where he needs to go to the hospital, and that's the way it is. And I'm sure in the middle of fucking Kansas, that didn't look good on them, but they did the right thing.
Yep.
And that's there's a whole other element of that where it's like, there's of course going to be stigma around that, and they're going to be blamed or they're going to be looked at as failures. That sometimes makes it hard for those parents to do the right thing. again, just trying to be a good parent sometimes ain't enough.
Right. And what it could be debatable on what John does next, if it's actually a good thing for Frank or not. But he decides to take him to where he found Clara and the rest of the band. And this scene, another mirror of the beginning, is wonderful because Frank is just standing on the floor, kind of looking around, trying to take it all in. And he starts to talk like John did in the beginning about the waves crashing in, but instead he says, he thanks the bar for having him. He says, "I love your wall." Yeah. And this is where his kind of creative, the step that John could never take, Frank takes immediately and writes like kind of a beautiful, touching song about the band embracing him again, right? Like, take me back. I'm here. Put your arms around me. Even if you're nervous, which I think is like the fiddly digits kind of stuff. He's like, just, I love you guys and I want you to love me too. Yeah. And he's pretty much focused on Clara here. Like, when he's saying I love you all, he's really singing to her.
And they're starting to play along to what he's singing as well. So it does feel like this healing that's happening with all of them. This cohesive unit is starting to come together again.
It's beautiful. It's really beautiful.
And then John just leaves.
Yeah, he's watching from the bar, and then it cuts back to him, and he's gone.
Yeah, and he's put them back to where they were.
They're finally without a keyboardist, where they always
needed to be,
wanted or needed to be.
Right. One thing that we didn't mention about the whole chinchilla thing is that John becomes famous for being the chinchilla guy. Instead of anything else. All of the stuff that he had set up for the band is basically fucked because he becomes known as the chinchilla guy, and he doesn't become famous for anything positive. He becomes famous for being laughed at.
Yeah, I mean, it's brought up by that guy when he's looking for Frank, and it's a really like kind of scathing comment on popularity via social media.
Right.
That we thought that Frank was just funny. We thought Clara was a character.
Exactly.
It's like they're none of what, like, and you alluded to this with John, none of what they were doing is why they were famous.
Right.
It's the act that people thought they were that made them famous. When in reality, they're a very dysfunctional, hurting group of people that are being capitalized on.
And being laughed at.
Yeah.
But again, when Clara stabs John gets his comeuppance for wanting to be famous by becoming famous for being kind of an asshole idiot. It's like he's
for exploiting them, basically.
And while they don't realize that's what they're laughing at, that is what they're laughing at, is the fact that he fucked this band up to the point where somebody tried to kill him. But and now they're laughing at him for that.
It's super important that John realizes all the mistakes, and he's apologized to people, but the fact that he walks away instead of trying to join the embrace is a very big kind of growth for John too, because earlier in the film, you'd think he'd take credit for this, for bringing them back together. But instead he's like, no, I need to remove myself from this because I was the problem. It's really, the end of this movie is just awesome, I think.
Yeah, it's perfect.
This is good stuff. I mean, it is a comedy with a lot of punch to it. We should say that the director, Lenny Abrahamson, Lenny Abrahamson, he's no nothing. 1 year later, he's nominated for Best Director for Room.
For Room, yeah. And Stephen Rennicks, I think, was he nominated for Best Score for that as well?
Possibly. I think they got a bunch, and of course have won.
Well, maybe it wasn't for the Academy Award, but he got awards for the score for that. Yeah.
Yeah. He it ended up winning Best Actress for Brie Larson. So not a nothing guy. I mean, and he had done some other stuff leading up to this too. So that was well liked. So there was something that I read that he was supposedly going to be working on something, but it ended up either not happening. And
I never actually saw that movie. Now I'm intrigued. We'll probably check it out.
It's a toughie.
Yeah, I'd assume so.
yeah.
That's kind of why
It's
I stayed away from it.
Heavy stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest with you, that's why I kind of stayed away from it too, even though I'm sure it's a great film.
It's very well made, but the subject matter is very difficult. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah. So no, I was very, 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 very surprised that I liked this movie as much as I did, because I just thought this is going to be like a weird movie. I'm going to have to be in a certain headspace. Not really. This movie is very funny on its own merits. I mean, it is, and it's
very likable.
It should be famous. It's very likable.
But I think you even asked us on air in our last episode if you were going to like it.
And I asked you, am I going to hate this movie?
Yeah,
that's exactly what I said. In
my opinion, it was definitely like one of those, you're going to be on the fence, but when you fall off, you're going to roll real hard, whatever direction.
That's fair. That is fair. But no, this is, I mean, the reason why we did this movie is because I recommended This is Spinal Tap, to which, Jay's like, no, we need something weirder. And I'm like, oh, fuck.
I was a little worried about how we talk about Spinal Tap. I still think we can do Spinal Tap. I just wasn't in the right, I'd just seen it recently, and I was like, man, I don't know how we're going to talk about this movie. Is it just going to be one of those episodes where we just talk about all the jokes, right?
Right.
And those don't always end up being the best episodes. I felt like Frank brought a little bit more meat and potatoes as far as things we could talk about. So here we are.
Well, look who has a big giant plastic head. Anyway, no, but no, and so it was one of those things where it's like, oh, it's gonna be like the weird Spinal Tap or something. And it's like, I don't know. Well, I guess we'll do it. And then I started watching it, and from like minute one, I'm like, I am in. I am ready for this. Because the songs that John was trying to come up with are so fucking stupid.
Yeah.
They're bad. They're very bad. And and so it's like, but they're bad in kind of the way that don't take this exactly the way that I word this, but they're bad in the way that I don't know, the Flight of the Conchords are kind of like bad but really smart and funny.
Yeah.
They write bad songs, but they're done so well that they are funny. That's how I was kind of listening to, especially the one about the lady in the red coat and the lady in the blue coat. And it's like, this is a Flight of the Conchords song.
Totally.
I mean, it totally is. And it's like, but because it's not Flight of the Conchords and you can't hear anything else with it, it's like, this is shit.
The Flight of the Conchords would take the concept of trying to write a song off the cuff about anything into a funny song about
writing off the cuff.
The cuff, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So no, I'm very, very happy.
I mean, it's very much the hip hopopotamus in a way, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Sometimes
who's Steve?
When I freestyle, I lose confidence.
Yeah. 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 Who's Steve?
Yeah.
Anyway.
So I think this movie is a wonderful examination of the creative process.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of statements, definitive statements about what it feels things are, and they're all well earned.
Mm-hmm.
When they say, social media popularity sucks, it's a well earned statement. You'd have to form an argument with examples to combat what this movie is trying to say, which makes it a really good movie in my opinion.
And I don't think it's necessarily saying that social media popularity sucks, but social media popularity via a specific way sucks. Like just being a persona or just being the person who's there and giving you and exploiting something is a shitty way to become famous.
Yeah, I guess
there are a lot of people
Yeah.
on social media who absolutely fucking earn their popularity because they're bringing an amazing artistry to a platform.
Sure.
Yeah, I was talking about just the example in this movie.
Sure. I just wanted to clarify. It's
Yeah,
okay.
no, and to say that, but yeah, there are. I mean, to kind of piggyback off of both of you on this is that there is there's definitely a large number of people who have been able to make social media, in particular YouTube, their jobs, and they do incredible amounts of money per video, money per year. And what they do is kind of cynically exploit something that somebody else has done better. And it's, there are people on YouTube who very poorly just read articles to their fans and comment shittily on that, and they are rich, and it should be illegal, in my opinion. Because for anybody who actually tries to create something, who tries to do something, it's very frustrating when somebody who puts very little work and almost no reading skills into a six-figure a year job, it really makes you realize that it's stupid and it sucks and those people are awful. But anyway, I digress. I didn't mean to let that get a little personal there, but anyway. Anyway, so I don't know. I think we do it? Have we done it?
I think we've done it. Yeah.
Okay. I would recommend most people seeing that. I would even recommend this to my dad, who has watched some of the movies that we've talked about. It is a little weirder than what Dad typically watches, but I think he would appreciate some of the humor in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I mean, he liked Spinal Tap. So anyway, Dad, check it out. It's on Prime. Just watch it on Prime. Anyway. Yeah. So next week, so we did we had a bunch of ideas and we just drew them out of a hat. So next week,
now for something completely different, right?
Well, yeah, sort of. We have the 1978 version of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, directed by Philip Kaufman, who was really kind of the beginning of a decade's worth of big time movies for him, at least critically. So one in particular is very big. But yeah, so the Invasion of the Body Snatchers, probably the undisputed king of those four versions of that movie. I will talk about each one of the four. Jason asked me, and I thought, well, if he's going to be so obsessed over Frank, I guess I can do my homework on Invasion of the Body Snatchers. But anyway, I like I like three of them. The Invasion is not very good.
Oh yeah, that's not very good.
It's poopy. Yeah. But anyway, but that's going to be next week. You can find that at filmseizure.com or where you like to listen to podcasts. We're in several podcast providers, so just check that out. Also, next week on Monday, I have Monster Mondays, also on filmseizure.com, all those same places that you can catch that show or our show here. You can catch Monster Mondays. This time it is Werewolves Within, the incredibly fun 2021, the best damn video game movie I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Easily.
It's up there for sure.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, it's not just up, it's easily the best video game movie I've ever seen. Those movies suck. But anyway, Werewolves Within, a fun little horror comedy. Check that out. Also, I have my website, bmovieanima.com. This Friday's my birthday. Did you guys know that? Yesterday was Chuck's birthday.
Happy birthday to me.
Happy birthday to me too. And how am I going to
guys?
How am I going to celebrate on bmovieanima.com? by talking about a movie that has sex and Nazis in it. Tinto Brass's Black Angel is this week's feature. It's actually the best movie of the month. It's actually a really good movie, but it's essentially a European Nazi porno. Oh boy.
That's what you do. It's what you do.
It's what I do. That's why I'm not famous, because that's not a likable subject that I just wrote about there. Anyway, so yeah, do that. Anyway, follow us Facebook and Twitter. You can stay up to date on all the stuff we do at Film Seizure. So until next week, when some of us or all of us may be replaced by pod people, I am Jeff Arbuckle.
I'm Chuck Moore.
I'm Jason Oliver, and you have been listening to Film Seizure.